Christmas ornaments, drywall, and Jerry Epstein. Name 3 things that don't hang themselves.
Jeffrey Epstein. Name 3 things that don't hang themselves. That's kind of fun. That's Senator John Kennedy. He's always good for a great line. That's one of the reasons the media hates him. Another is they hate almost everyone. They like Jeffrey Epstein more than they like Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana. Well, happy Monday once again. I can't believe it's hour number 3 already. How did that happen? I'm just getting warmed up. The Washington Post, my best girl and I were sitting on the couch this morning, and my best girl was reading through the Washington Post ahead of me, and she was scoffing and laughing out loud here and there at this rag, this filthy propaganda sheet of the Democrat Party, which isn't democratic at all. And they're attacking everyone and everything, and except for child porn. They love gay child porn. That they love, especially in grammar schools. And they got a Dr. Jill Biden story on their front page, giant color picture. It's most of the front page. See that? Look at that. It's hard to read. And First Lady Jill Biden has criticized challenges to books and libraries, but avoids partisan broadsides, followed by a thoroughly partisan story, which is completely unreasonable and lopsided and doesn't go into the Democrats banning Mark Twain and J.K. Rowling and, To Kill a Mockingbird. Never mind all that. Roald Dahl rewriting books from the 20th century because their sensibilities, if they can still be called sensibilities, are so easily offended. And on the front page, next to the Jill Biden fluff job, where they never point out that what she's advocating is for more gay child porn in grammar schools, like gender queer. Look up gender queer and find the graphic pages if you'd like to see what Dr. Jill Biden, who's not a doctor at all, is advocating and what the Washington Post is advocating. They want more gay child porn in the transgender. Hey, it's back to school week, so I saw that, where is it, in Prince William County? I can't believe this. In Virginia, they've got now metal detectors at the front door, and Fairfax County, they have genital detectors at the front door so that you can, which bathroom you can use. And the Democrats, they're very unwell. They really, really are.
So say it with me. Si se puede. The future is ours.
Si se puede, right. And what is it, the breakfast tacos of San Antonio?
As unique as the breakfast tacos here in San Antonio.
Racist. She is a complete racist. Oh, speaking of Democrats, not here, but in the Daily Mail, Worcester, that's in England, Bishop Robert McManus issued blanket ban on bending school rules for trans students. I don't think you should use the word bending there. And trans, I assume they mean transgender. They're not just transiting from one place to another. We have to stop using trans. It's transgender. Don't allow the shorthand, the abbreviation. And also don't use the word biological. A man is a man. A male is a male. A woman is a woman. A female is a female. They don't have to be biological. That is a superfluous, unnecessary, repetitive, and redundant word. See how I made that a series of redundancies? So there it is. The Bishop, Robert McManus, issues a blanket ban on bending school rules for trans students and will force them to wear uniform, use bathrooms, and play sports based on biological sex. That's because that's their sex. The new policy will force, require, students to wear correct uniform, use the right pronouns, enter the appropriate bathrooms, and play sports based on their biological sex. That's because that's their sex. Worcester Bishop Robert J. McManus approved it in June, and it bans students from expressing, celebrating, or advocating for, quote, same-sex attraction. Well, you mean school isn't for making everybody gay and changing their genders? A Catholic bishop pardon me, and the story is out of the United Kingdom. The Catholic bishop in Worcester, Massachusetts, Gesundheit, has issued a blanket ban on bending of school rules for transgender students. It will force them, I would say require them, to wear the correct uniform. This is Catholic school. Wear the correct uniforms. That is, if you're a boy, you wear a boy's uniform. If you're a girl, you wear the girl's uniform. You use pronouns assigned at birth. That's a boy or a girl. Enter the appropriate bathroom, boys' rooms, girls' room. Play sports based on their biological sex because that's their sex. And the Worcester Bishop, Robert McManus, it is, and the Democrats are, of course, angry about this. It affects 21 schools in the Roman Catholic Diocese of Worcester, Mass., which has more than 5,260 students. More than. Couldn't get a precise number other than 5,260. It will come into effect in the coming academic year. The policy announced August 15th has drawn criticism from several state lawmakers. I'm guessing they're Democrats. And you probably shouldn't have the kids play duck, duck, goose with those, don't you think? Been praised by the Catholic Action League of Massachusetts. Good for him, and it's about time because the Democrats are twisted, and what they're doing to children ought to be illegal. And in fact, just a few years ago, it was. But the laws don't apply to them. And the new guidelines require the students to conduct themselves at school in a manner consistent with their biological sex. Schools in the Roman Catholic Diocese of Worcester were sent the new policy in order to implement it in handbooks for the new academic year. Now, isn't that awful? Because, the Democrats don't believe that boys are boys or that girls are girls, and they're here to screw all that up, aren't they? And the New York Times is not covering it, and the Boston Globe is not covering it, although I'm sure they will, and then they'll attack them. Amazing stuff. All right, now back to this, because the Washington Post front page of the style section, the headline, right-wing influencers, they're right-wing influencers, have found a new anthem, and Anne Brannigan she typed up this crazy story on behalf of the extreme radical left, and they love child sex trafficking. So if you're against it, then they attack you, you see. And if you're a patriotic American, then they attack you. And if you recognize that there are issues, which used to be the news media's role in our society, that there are issues that need to be addressed in the United States, then they attack you, unless you're a supporter of radical extreme left-wing, genderless children, LGBTQ, child education, and, and man on boy sex and graphic novels and grammar school. That is, all of that is supported by the Washington Post, right? So she writes, if you had asked someone at the beginning of the month whether they had heard let alone listened to, the Oliver Anthony, the song Rich Men North of Richmond, you probably would have gotten a blank stare in return. Now the singer from Farmville, Virginia, they say dripping with disdain, with a fiery beard and a big voice, is everywhere because his viral song, Rich Men North of Richmond, you see. And then they write, but the lyrics, they're attacking the song and attacking him. And Anne Brannigan, a radical extremist, leftist, the Washington Post, working for one of the information oligarchs in bed with the Democrat Party as the merger of state and corporate power continues. And she writes, but with lyrics such as, I wish politicians would look out for minors, like coal miners, and not just minors, like children, on an island somewhere. You've heard the song. It sounds like this. Uh-oh. And when you push the button, it sounds like this.
So I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is.
But it is. And he goes on about a lot of issues that a lot of Americans are dealing with, many tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions. And the Washington Post would run him over with a truck if they could. And Ann Brannigan continues, but with lyrics like, I wish politicians would look out for minors and not just minors on an island somewhere, an apparent reference to the late financier Jeffrey Epstein. He's a financier. He was a late financier, not a serial child rapist, in good with all the Democrats, including Bill Clinton, who flew on his plane, spent time on his island, where the underage girls were brought for, obviously, sex. And that's what he was in prison for. And Ghislaine Maxwell, in prison now, won't talk because of all the big Democrats that spent time on, what was his plane called? Lolita One, and his private island, which was just for sex. And how many famous Democrats, Harvard professors, Alan Dershowitz, Bill Clinton, using his private airplane and his private island. To what end do you think? That's not a play on words.
Wish politicians would look out for minors, and not just minors on an island somewhere.
An apparent reference to the late financier, Jeffrey Epstein, they're going to call him a financier forever now, who was charged with sex trafficking, but he's not guilty, see? And did he hang himself? Where were the cameras? Where were the prison guards? How long did that take? How did he have the wherewithal? He was on suicide watch. Good job, Democrats. But got rid of a thorn in his side. I guess Jeffrey Epstein said that, what was it? Prince Andrew, is it? Liked sex more than him? Is that what it was? Jeffrey Epstein, who was charged with sex trafficking, Richmond also nods to conspiracy theories and grievances. These are two of their favorite talking points these days, conspiracy theories and grievances, like Russian collusion and President Trump, which never happened. And let's see, what else? I could go on. So conspiracy theories and grievances that are deeply rooted in far-right circles. And then in parentheses, QAnon believers often cite Epstein as proof of a global cabal of elites that have been trafficking children. Well, Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, or he didn't, but that's what he was in prison for, isn't it? And all these big-time Democrats using his plane and his island. And then, interestingly, when nobody was looking and there were no cameras working and no video, and then he killed himself when he was on suicide watch in jail, but nobody was around. And there's nothing to see here, right? And he was innocent. I guess the Washington Post said he was just accused, Some believe the success of the song, particularly on the heels of Sound of Freedom, a film exposing the horrors of child trafficking and child sex trafficking, a box office smash that echoed QAnon propaganda. So wait a minute, if there's child sex trafficking and you mention it, then you're advancing QAnon propaganda? So that's their way of deflecting for child sex traffickers, isn't it? Yes, it is. Signals the mainstreaming of ideas that were once fringe. Really? Like President Trump was an agent of the Russians and Vladimir Putin? Is that one of those fringe ideas that you're talking about? You guys. And that's the Washington Post. That's they're pro-child sex trafficking. And right next to it, they're pro-child porn in gay child porn in grammar schools. They'd never be in favor of heterosexual child porn in grammar schools because that would be wrong. But LGBTQ, gender queer, look it up, find the graphics. That's what she's advocating. That's what she's fighting for. It's gay child porn in grammar schools. That's what they're fighting for. While they ban J.K. Rowling, Roald Dahl, Mark Twain, and Harper Lee in schools. Those are the books they tend to ban, the Democrats. Tells too much about themselves, I guess. And, how did they lump in, that's kind of amazing, the Sound of Freedom with this song by Oliver Anthony, Rich Men North of Richmond? Well, it's two things they hate. Patriotism, truth, popular music, and movies that expose child sex traffickers. They will shoot you down if you sound the alarm. That's your Democrat Party, and that's the Washington Post and Jill Biden and some woman at the Washington Post named Ann Brannigan. QAnon. There's no child trafficking. There's no child sex trafficking. It's QAnon. I bet if you sat her down and asked her what QAnon was, she'd sit there with her mouth hanging open. You write the rest. Breaking news, President Biden's plan to roll out the digital dollar is already underway, and that's why it's vital to understand the potential consequences here because, believe it or not, contrary to their claims, this Biden initiative, the digital dollar, may not be in your best interest or mine. Let's just say definitely not. Time is of the essence, so take action now. It's absolutely necessary to protect yourself. You can help protect your savings and your family's future from the risks of the digital dollar by diversifying now with IRAs in gold and silver. The experts at American Alternative Assets, great friends of our radio show, are standing by to take your call at 888-4GOLD20. That's 888-4GOLD20, 888-446-5360. They'll give you all the guidance you need on safeguarding your retirement savings. Say no to Joe Biden's crazy digital dollar. Call 888-4GOLD20, 888-446-5360. Call them today. Individual results may vary. There's no guarantee that past performance will be indicative of future results. Seek your own legal, tax, investment, and financial advice before opening an account. Yeah, that's your Washington Post. Now, I still got to get to Joe Biden because we learned a lot about the corrupt Biden family and the corrupt Justice Department over the weekend, too, and the corrupt special counsel from corrupt Delaware. That's coming up. Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Book by this July 31st for extra savings. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. Now let's go to the writer, the singer of the great hit song now, Richmond, north of Richmond. His name is Oliver Anthony, and he spoke to Griff Jenkins at the Fox News Channel over the weekend.
Are you surprised that the public has reacted the way they did? Do you realize the crowd is touched by your music?
Yeah, well, it resonates the suffering in the world right now. Like even in our own country, we've had years of people feeling depressed and hopeless, and every time you look at the TV or get online, everything's negative. And so I think people are just desperate for something positive again. You know, like there's been a lot of people die for us to be able to stand on this dirt and do what it is we do every day, and we should be excited for it.
Oliver Anthony is a veteran. He lives in a trailer or a camper with his 3 dogs. He was offered an $8 million contract last week. He turned it down, and I've got more coming up on him. And so these, Washington elite weasels like the Washington Post are smearing him and slandering him because, well, they're not exactly the truth people, are they? Got more on that coming up, and Joe Biden's corrupt family. Let's go to one more Griff Jenkins with our man Oliver Anthony, who is a fascinating story. He apparently dropped out of high school. He joined the military. He served in the military. He's been a working man. He lives in a camper or a trailer with 3 dogs, and he's been writing a few songs, and he turned down an $8 million contract last week. And Griff Jenkins, who's a friend of mine and a good guy, and a surfer, and he goes to like Costa Rica to surf, Griff Jenkins. But he was talking to the writer, and this is gigantic. It's number 1 on iTunes. It's number 1 on Apple Music. It's number 1 on wherever else you buy the music. It's number 1 everywhere. There have been literally tens of millions of downloads, and it's popular not just in the United States, but around the world. So naturally, the left is out to murder him because they're psychotic, just to name one of their many fine characteristics. But here is Oliver Anthony with Griff Jenkins.
What do you hope comes of the song in your music? I know you turned $8 million down. You did a great statement. You said you don't want jets. You don't want tour buses. What do you want?
I just want to go back to the woods, honestly. But no, what I really want in the bigger scheme of things is just people to start appreciating each other for human beings and look beyond political differences and ideologies.
Look for differences. Can you imagine that? He should probably run for Congress. He sounds much more reasonable than any member of the media that we've taken a look at today. This WTKR claiming that it's climbed to number 2 on Spotify in the U.S. I think it's number 1 in Spotify. I think it's number 1 on everything. But there have been, I think I saw 25 or 28 million downloads. Rich men north of Richmond, Virginia. Richmond, that's the capital of the Confederacy. But he's talking about Washington, D.C. He's talking about Congress. He's talking about the people running our country into the side of a mountain. And the tens of millions of downloads just gives the Washington Post and like-minded leftist Democrats another excuse to attack him. They just want to attack. How dare you say out loud what so many millions of people are thinking? And he's also said correctly that it's popular all over the world, not just in the United States, because we're living through this era of big government in your face, in your pants, in your bank account, in your children's business, taking away your freedoms. And it's not just here. Although here is what we care about most. We've got to hold on to America, Fortress America. Otherwise, the rest of the world is doomed. And that is a straight-up fact. 20th century. If you replayed the 20th century without the United States being an actor in the 20th century, like winning World War II, smashing Hitler's Socialist Workers' Party, containing and then defeating the Soviet Union, keeping Mao's China in a cage. Of course, they still murdered 100 million people and enslaved billions, even in spite of our very best efforts. And we had more than 400,000 killed in World War II, 115,000 killed in World War I, and countless tens of thousands killed in the Cold War. We're the good guys, by the way. We are the good guys. But the Democrat Party is not on our side. They're not. Let's go to Joe Biden and his corrupt family. The phony baloney New York Times front group for the Democrat Party published a piece inside the collapse of Hunter Biden's plea deal. And in the story, they tell about how the prosecutor, who is David Weiss, who was the acting and interim U.S. attorney in Delaware under Barack Obama, and then was foisted upon President Trump, who didn't have a long line of lawyers waiting to take these jobs like Democrats do, foisted upon President Trump by the 2 left-wing Democrat senators from Delaware. And President Trump relented and said, okay, I'll take this David Weiss guy. Okay. He was put in there by a couple of times by Obama. But what's the big? So now this guy, David Weiss, he's the man in charge. Special counsel David Weiss appeared to be willing to end the Hunter Biden investigation earlier this year in 2023 without any charges being filed against Hunter Biden. But he seems to have changed his mind around the same time that 2 IRS whistleblowers came forward and accused the Justice Department of stonewalling the case, slow-rolling the case, and giving Hunter Biden special treatment, the New York Times reported on Saturday. It's unclear if David Weiss actually changed course because of the whistleblowers. Just a coincidence. And then, of course, David Weiss gave Hunter Biden 2 misdemeanor charges, tax charges, when the rest of us would have gone to prison for 100 years. And then the gun charges, which he also slow-rolled and then gave him the kid gloves treatment. But David Weiss is, he's a Delaware guy, and so is Joe Biden. And Hunter Biden got the kid gloves treatment. He got the sweetheart deal treatment from David Weiss, right? And then New York Times found out. So it was leaked to them directly so they could spin it because they probably thought it was going to come out through the congressional investigators, and they didn't want it to come out there. They wanted their New York Times spin, so they got it to the New York Times. He wasn't going to charge Hunter Biden at all. But then it turns out, a couple of misdemeanor tax charges, and then it turns out that last Thursday, last Thursday, and I don't know if the Washington Post has even bothered to mention this, they dropped the tax charges against Hunter Biden and said, oh yeah, we'll recharge him later when nobody is looking. It will just go away because this is the slow roll once again in the sweetheart deal. It's like an Eastern European hellhole during the Cold War, the United States of America. Our justice system. A federal judge in Delaware dismissed 2 tax misdemeanor charges against Hunter Biden that were filed as part of his now defunct plea deal, paving the way for special counsel David Weiss to potentially bring more charges in another jurisdiction. Yeah, sometime later on maybe. And the news media is falling for this. This is such a crock. And it turns out nobody knew until this weekend that before investigating Hunter Biden, David Weiss used to work with Hunter Biden's brother, Beau Biden. This is like, you've seen these movies in the 1970s, like Macon County Line, where the redneck sheriff is in bed with the redneck judge, and, the redneck son commits a redneck crime, and he's the bad guy. But the fix is in, because the judge is your cousin and the sheriff is your cousin, and no big deal. And Andy of Mayberry, the Andy Griffith Show, in the first couple episodes, Barney Fife was actually Andy's cousin. But then they stopped that. They just stopped mentioning it. So David Weiss, the special counsel investigating Hunter Biden, has long targeted Delaware's powerful interests, the Washington Post pretends. His one-time experience with Beau Biden potentially complicates the probe. Is it a heavily lubricated, ever-expanding probe? When Delaware's acting U.S. Attorney, David C. Weiss, celebrated a fraud conviction in 2010, he was joined by a key partner in the case, Beau Biden, the state's Attorney General. Honestly, Weiss worked with Joe Biden's eldest son to hash out prosecution strategies we will continue to aggressively pursue. This is the Washington Post spinning it for him, see? Now, this is just the classic old kind of Eastern European, Hollywood would do it as, rednecks in the South somewhere, where your cousin is the prosecutor and your other cousin is the judge and your other cousin is the sheriff. And that's what's going on in Delaware here. And David Weiss, it turns out, we just learned over the weekend, the New York Times had it handed to them so they could spin it. And then the Washington Post had this relationship with Beau Biden handed to them so they could spin it. Isn't it great to be a Democrat? Boy, that's wonderful. And then it gets better. Leaked documents, the Gateway Pundit. Hunter Biden was involved in the Trump impeachment over Ukraine. What? What's this? Hunter Biden was involved in Trump's impeachment over Ukraine, according to documents leaked to the radical left-wing commie pimps, Democrat Party shills at Politico. Hunter Biden's lawyers leaked the entire case file to have it spun by their friends at Politico. I know, I used to get a lot of leaks. I covered the Pentagon and the intelligence community for 10 years, back when CNN was a news organization. Hunter Biden's lawyers leaked the entire case file related to the Department of Justice's 5-year-long investigation with no charges. Isn't that amazing? He's going to die of natural causes, Hunter Biden, before they ever get around to anything here, of old age, which might take a long time given his family's history here. So the Hunter Biden's lawyers leaked the whole thing to the left-wingers at Politico. And the New York Times and Politico both published leaked documents revealing new information about Hunter Biden's case and the inner workings of the Justice Department. This is just banana republic stuff. This is a 4-banana day for American journalism. According to the emails leaked to Politico, Hunter Biden met with impeachment lawyers in January of 2020. Isn't that fascinating? In January of 2020, what was going on then? Gosh, isn't that amazing? So recall in September 2019, then Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Democrats launched an impeachment inquiry. Republicans really need to do that for Joe Biden, into President Trump over his phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to ask him about Biden family corruption and getting millions of dollars from Ukraine. And for that, he was impeached. Then we found out it was all true. President Trump's phone call with Zelensky was cordial, and there were no threats, no pressure, no quid pro quo, as Adam Schiff and the Democrats like to claim in public. Hunter Biden met with impeachment lawyers as Pelosi and Schiff were on the House floor lying about Trump's phone call with Zelensky. And they had that Ukrainian-American Army Lieutenant Colonel also, who was a big problem because he made up all that stuff too. But never mind that. It's important to note the FBI was in possession of Hunter Biden's laptop from hell, which documented numerous crimes related to the Biden's work in Ukraine, while Democrats were persecuting Trump with an impeachment investigation. Trump asked Zelensky to look into Joe Biden's threats to withhold money from Ukraine, as well as Hunter Biden's shady business with Burisma. How dare he? President Trump wanted Zelensky to look into the firing of Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor general, who was investigating Ukrainian oligarch Mykola Zlochevsky and Hunter Biden and Burisma Holdings. And he was investigating them. He posted a video saying exactly that. On January 26th of 2020, Hunter Biden's advisors said they would need Biden to set aside several hours to go through documents to settle his tax case, you see. Hunter replied, quote, "I have a meeting tomorrow with impeachment lawyers for the day. It will have to wait until Tuesday, I'm afraid." So wait a minute. Why is he meeting with the impeachment lawyers when it's all part of the cover-up? Because they're all Democrat hacks, right? Isn't that amazing? This is the Biden family's Washington and Delaware dueling banjos. And Miranda Devine wrote, and this curious fact, Hunter Biden was involved in the Trump impeachment probe over Ukraine in the summer of 2019. He tells an advisor he had an all-day meeting with the impeachment lawyers. After 5 years, he's still not been interviewed by David Weiss. 5 years. You are so fired. God, you're fired. That is just amazing. This is so corrupt. This isn't a grand jury. We're going to have to come up with another name for it. By the way, according to a new ABC News Ipsos poll, which they published, but they only published the parts that were negative for Republicans and President Trump. According to this new poll, 32% of us, the American people, 32% of us have confidence in the integrity and independence of the investigation. ABC News found that in their Harvard-Harris poll, but to find it in their story will take you quite some time. Now, Jonathan Turley wrote a piece on it. ABC Ipsos poll, roughly half of Americans have no confidence in the Hunter Biden investigation, and only 32% of us express trust in the integrity and independence of the David Weiss investigation. Gee, I wonder why. Even though we're not getting the information from the so-called mainstream media, which is just, a merger of state and corporate power, the Democrat Party and the information oligarchs, 32% of us, fewer than 1/3 of us, have confidence that this is a legitimate investigation. Confidence, trust in the integrity and independence of the investigation. And the ABC News people found that in their own poll, and they buried it in their own poll. But it was only after Gary Shapley and the other IRS whistleblower came forward and blew the whistle on the Biden family that David Weiss, who's a Delaware insider and used to work with Beau Biden, finally, he decided, well, we better do something about this. Then last Thursday, they quietly dropped the tax charges, and the news media decided that wasn't worth mentioning. Boy, oh boy. All right, let's go to Congressman James Comer, chair of the House Oversight Committee, who's trying to get to the bottom of the Biden family corruption, millions and millions. The new figure is $53 million. coming off of Capitol Hill, going into the Biden family coffers. And the Washington Post could care less because Jeff Bezos owns them, information oligarch, merger of state and corporate power. James Comer, yesterday on with Maria Bartiromo.
We're about to find out whether the special counsel is going to interfere in our investigation because we're headed to court. The next bank records that we're going to subpoena will tell a whole lot bigger story about how involved Joe Biden was in this Biden influence peddling scheme. Somewhere around Wednesday of this week, It will be the deadline. We expect National Archives to cooperate with our investigation.
Yeah, and we'll see whether they do, because even they have turned political. We've found the permanent bureaucracy, the deep state. Get your deep state T-shirts and coffee mugs at the Chris Plant store, along with Remember Normal and I Survived the Wuhan Red Death and all kinds of great stuff. Here is Congressman James Comer.
There are some bank records that we believe will tell a big story about what level of involvement not only Joe had with the business schemes, but how he benefited from the business schemes. The Biden attorneys know exactly where we're headed with this investigation. They have lawyered up. I mean, they are building Fort Knox around these bank accounts that we're going to subpoena next.
They're building, it's amazing, and the teams of lawyers, and they just amazing stuff. But Chunk Todd found out what the problem was. He's talking to radical left-wing extremist Minnesota Governor Tim Walz.
What do you make of that Joe Biden seems to not have this groundswell of support right now? Do you think it's all age?
No support. It's his age.
No, I think it's our system. I think Donald Trump and the Republican Party have poisoned it to people. No one trusts our institutions. No one trusts Congress. No one trusts any of us because all they do is attack our families, do those types of things.
Because all they do is attack our families. I guess that's a reference to Hunter Biden being scrutinized because it's all about Joe Biden's tens of millions of dollars for nefarious, corrupt, presumably illegal goings-on for years and years from Ukraine. President Trump was impeached for calling Ukraine to ask about the Biden family corruption. We live in a very corrupt city. Well, I do anyway, and you probably live someplace else. And James Comer, I hope he's got good security because the Democrats...